Hello everyone, my name is Anitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at the Mega Zoo deck in Special Booster 1.5 because Special Booster 1.5 definitely added a lot of new and interesting tools that you could really start to think about utilizing in some various different ways to just have a really powerful deck that the whole objective is just trying to get out your Megas so that way you could go into your level 7s really easily. And now that we have more level 7s we have access to, we definitely can start formulating a really new and interesting deck based around those level 7s. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gigimon. So Gigimon is the only Digitama we really need in the deck just because he is the best red Digitama that we have access to. So we don't really care about Gigimon's inheritable ability. Sometimes it could matter, but the times that it will matter is just a very few and far in between. We just care about the fact that he is a red Digitama that's going to be sitting in our raising area, so that way we have access to our red options at all times. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Ludomon. So Ludomon is a really fantastic Digimon for the deck because he's acting like basically a pseudo card draw engine for the deck because he has this really decent on-play ability where we get to check the top 5 cards of our deck and add 1 Ragnarlordmon and add 1 Digimon with Legend Arms and its typing among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So even though it is a little bit more specific on what the cards it's searching for, the fact that it's still searching for cards and we could still utilize this card means that it's definitely good for the deck. On top of which, after its on-play ability is done, we're just free and open to utilize the card to just swing into the opponent's security with. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Zubamon. So Zubamon is a really fantastic rookie because he's doing exactly the same things as Ludomon, except that Zubamon being red means we actually could Digivolve Gigimon into Zubamon if we really wanted to draw a card instead of utilizing his dig ability. So the fact that he has a little bit more applications than Ludomon for this style of deck means that he's definitely better for the deck, and he's still a really good card to be running for the deck because he's acting again as that pseudo card draw engine. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of Skullgreymon. So Skullgreymon is a really fantastic ultimate for the deck because the deck is primarily going to be red-black based, so having a red Digimon with a nice on-play ability is definitely really helpful for the deck because if we want to utilize him to act as a way to Digivolve up into our Megas, then we could do that as well, and he's a great starting point for those just because we don't need to Digivolve up into him because we really want his on-play ability because his on-play ability is just really powerful where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with blocker. So not only do we not need to worry about Digivolving up into him because he has this great on-play ability, but like I said, the deck is primarily going to be red-black based and he's going to be acting as the best way that we could Digivolve off of him into our Megas. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Magnadramon. So Magnadramon is a really decent Mega just because he has the blocker ability. So being able to have a blocker on a Mega level Digimon definitely is really powerful. And then on top of that, he even has a really nice on-play ability, which allows us to not really worry about Digivolving up into him because we want this on-play ability to trigger, and his on-play ability being able to de-Digivolve 2 on 2 of the opponent's Digimon is just really powerful because it's just a huge anti-tempo swing on the opponent because even though they are still left with the body on board, they might not be able to utilize that body properly, and sometimes if they can't rebuild, then it's just going to be really devastating setting the opponent that far back. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Briar-Ludramon. So Briar-Ludramon is a really decent Digimon for the deck just because of all of his high synergy with the deck. So the first big thing is he could Digivolve off of red or black, so the fact that we could utilize him to Digivolve off of Skullgreymon is some really good synergy there because it'll also give us some additional card draw by doing that, but he also has a relatively low play cost compared to a lot of the other level 6s that we're going to be playing, so he's just a little bit more efficient to play. And not only is he a little bit more efficient to play, he also has some higher DP than a lot of the other level 6s that we're going to be playing. So not only is he just good to Digivolve with, good to play, and has high DP, he also has a really nice inheritable ability for our level 7s, where he gives our level 7s the blocker ability. So this card is just doing so much for the deck, and it just has so much synergy, on top of the fact that he is also a Legend Arms Digimon, so he could also be searched off of Zubamon and Ludamon. So again, he's just in the deck because of the high levels of synergy he has. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Craniamon. So Craniamon is a pretty interesting Digimon just because he's a really powerful Digimon at what he's doing. So he is a little bit more expensive to just hard play, but once he's on the field, he is definitely a very big threat for the opponent, just because he has, again, the blocker ability similar to Magnadramon, where just having blockers on our Mega level Digimon is really, really powerful, because it could help wall the opponent out. And then on top of which, he also has this really powerful ability where during all turns, your Digimon with blocker, including himself, cannot be deleted by the opponent's card effects. So just the extra addition of the possible protection is really, really nice because it makes it even harder for the opponent to deal with some of our Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Volcanicdramon. So Volcanicdramon is another really powerful on-play Mega, because his on-play ability, allowing us to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with 4,000 or less DP, is just really, really powerful. So if we're playing a couple of blockers and they're just not really wanting to attack and they're just trying to get a wide board, then we could just slam down a Volcanicdramon and blow away a lot of that wide board. And that's just really, really powerful to think about. On top of which, he is a red Digimon, so a lot of our level 7s want to be digivolved off of red or black primarily. So the fact that a lot of our level 6s are going to be red or black means that he's really, really good. And then on top of which, he also has this nice security attack +1. So if we need to utilize him to try to pressure the opponent depending on the matchup, then we're more than welcome to utilize him for that as well. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Durandamon. So Durandamon is basically in here for all of the exact same reasons as Boilerudramon. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Magnadramon. So Magnadramon, even though it is off-color, we definitely really want its on-play ability, because its on-play ability being able to recover us 2 if our security is 3 or less is definitely really, really powerful, because it could help keep us in the game a little bit longer, even though we're never going to be utilizing its when attacking ability and we can't digivolve off of this yet. It's still just a really powerful Digimon just for that recover ability. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Ragnalordmon. So Ragnalordmon is probably going to be one of the best, if not the best, level 7 that we could utilize in the deck, just because this card is doing so much for the deck. So the first big thing is he can digivolve off of red or black as a level 7, so that kind of is why the majority of our level 6s are red and black, and then on top of which his Digivolution cost is a lot less than a lot of the other level 7s that we're going to be playing, so he's even more efficient to Digivolve up into, and he has some really powerful abilities where he natively has the Security Attack 1 ability, so he could apply lots of pressure on the opponent, and then on top of which he also has the Reboot ability, so he becomes a little bit harder to deal with because the opponent will have a less likelihood of attacking into him, and then on top of this, he even has a really powerful when digivolving ability, where we get to place a Durandamon or Boilerudramon from our hand on top of this card's evolution stack to gain the 3 memory back. So he essentially could digivolve for technically 0, which is really, really good, and because of this ability, we could utilize even more keywords to the card, making him even more powerful. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Omnimon. So Omnimon is really, really good just because of his removal ability when you digivolve up into him. So his when digivolving ability basically allows you to just straight up delete one of the opponent's Digimon and all Digimon of the same name as that Digimon you deleted. So he just has a very powerful form of removal, on top of which he has another really powerful when attacking ability, where we could unsuspend this Digimon by returning one of the level 6s back to our hand. So this is really powerful because we could then reutilize our level 6s that we brought back to get an extra attack to help pressure and close out the game that much more easier and that much more efficiently, especially since he has 15,000 DP, so he already has some of the highest DP in the game, so there's not that much in the game that's actually going to be able to stop him. Next up, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Millenniumon. So Millenniumon is another really solid Digimon to utilize just because he's basically acting very similar to Omnimon. So the whole idea on why we're utilizing this card is his When Digivolve removal ability, where we get to put one of the opponent's Digimon to the bottom of their deck. So this is just an alternate form of removal, so if the opponent has any on-delete abilities we don't want to trigger, then Millenniumon is a great way of getting rid of those Digimon without triggering their abilities. And then on top of which, he has a nice on-delete ability, where if this card has any Digivolution cards underneath him, then we get to replay him for free, making him a really sticky body and a very persistent body, so that way they're going to have to effectively remove him twice. And depending on the deck in the matchup, that might be really, really hard to deal with, especially since we're going to be continuing to play Mega level Digimon and just try to put so much pressure on the opponent that they just might not even be able to handle it. And then the last Mega of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Omnimon Alter S. So Omnimon Alter S is just another very fantastic Digimon. He synergizes with the deck a whole lot just because he could Digivolve off of red or black, which is the vast majority of our level 6s. And then on top of which, he has 2 really powerful abilities that are basically almost doing the same things as the OG Omnimon, but just a little bit different. So he has a When Digivolving ability where we get to de-Digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then if any of their Digimon on the field have 5,000 or less DP, then we get to delete all of them. So he's kind of acting very similar to Volcanicdramon in the fact that we're trying to utilize him as a board wipe, and the de-Digivolving, making them weaker, definitely helps with wiping the opponent's field. And then on top of which, he has a nice When Attacking ability where we get to make this Digimon unblockable. So if we need to utilize his ability to make him unblockable to just help close out the games, then we're able to do that as well. So he is just another really fantastic power card for the deck that just has a whole bunch of high synergy with the deck and is just overall a really powerful card. And then the only other card I'm going to be running is just 4 copies of Gaia Force as the only option. Now, if you want, you could think about utilizing some Tamers along with this and reduce the amount of Gaia Forces. I just felt like, based on what the deck is trying to do, Gaia Force is just a really good card to utilize, and just because sometimes we're unable to deal with some of the threats that the opponent might be threatening us with, so we just need to Gaia Force. But ideally, we want to see this card in the security so we don't have to hard play it, because its security ability activating its main effect definitely makes it a very powerful option card to be running. But speaking about other options, there's just a whole bunch of other cards that you could think about utilizing with the deck and still have a very powerful and very interesting deck. So if you want to run a blue low end for some more efficient card draw, then you could run Upamon as a really solid Digitama. And then Demivimon from BT-03 is another really good card at helping us draw cards, depending on the type of support that we put on our low end. So the best rookies that we have, if you're thinking about utilizing a blue low end, is going to be the Gabumon from BT-01, because he has a nice on-play ability of drawing us a card. And then the best other rookie that we have to complement the deck to really go with any of our Digitamas is going to be Vmon. So this Vmon's really good just because he has jamming, so whether he's on top of Upamon or Demivimon, there's a very high chance that we're going to be able to draw cards off of him, and he's going to be able to survive a lot of security checks because of the jamming ability. You could think about utilizing the Infamon promo card, just because, similar to Skullgreymon, he has a very nice on-play ability where we get to de-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon. So even though the effect isn't necessarily as powerful as Skullgreymon's, the fact that he's still an on-play, on-color definitely makes him a really good card to think about utilizing. You could also think about utilizing the Metal Greymon. So this Metal Greymon is really good just because he is just a slightly more efficient level 5 to play. And then on top of which, he has this really powerful When Attacking ability where we gain 3 memory, and then at the end of the turn, we lose 3 memory. So this is really good because if we're just hard casting everything anyway, giving the opponent a butt ton of memory, if we do get caught into situations where we are slightly memory starved, then he could help fix our memory. And then if they're just going to go to 10 memory anyway, then giving them 3 memory at the end of the turn doesn't really matter. So this is just a really fantastic card to think about utilizing just because of that application. And then if we want some really powerful other level 6s to run in the deck, we could think about utilizing Hyandramon just because he has a low evo cost, he has a low play cost, and he has some relatively decent DP compared to a lot of the other Digimon in the level, and he's on color, so he could Digivolve into almost any of our level 7s. If we want another really powerful utility type Mega, then we could think about utilizing Puppetmon, just because Puppetmon's playability to suspend and basically stun lock all of the opponent's suspended Digimon is definitely really powerful and can definitely swing games in your favor, especially if you need to buy or stall for time. Then he's just really good at doing that. And then on top of which, he has a nice when attacking ability to gain us a memory, so we're not necessarily the most memory efficient of decks, so being able to gain a memory could be a huge deal because that could change exactly what cards we play and how we play our cards. Next, we also could think about utilizing Phoenixmon. So Phoenixmon would basically just be doing the exact same things as High Andromon: low play cost, low evo cost, high DP compared to a lot of other Digimon in its level, and the fact that it's red means that it also could digivolve into almost any of our level 7s. If we are running a slight blue package, we could think about utilizing Hammerspark, just because, again, we're not necessarily the most memory of efficient of decks, so being able to have access to Hammerspark to gain us that one memory to make certain plays possible is definitely a really good thing to think about. And then we could think about utilizing Kaisernail. So Kaisernail is a really decent card for the deck because if the objective is just playing level 6s to digivolve into our level 7s, well, we could utilize Kaisernail to split apart our level 6s, so that way we get even more powerful Digimon on the field. And then if any of them have on-play abilities, then their on-play abilities will trigger. So if we need to, let's just say, digivolve Magnadramon into a Ragnalordmon, then we could utilize Kaisernail to split that Magnadramon out, create a blocker, and get its on-play ability, and just that type of synergy is just really what makes Kaisernail shine. If we are still continuing on this trend of running a blue base, then we could think about utilizing Cocytus Breath because it's one of the best and most efficient option cards that we have to remove a Digimon on the field. Even though it's not as good as a Gaia Force, it's still a very good idea to run some form of removal. If we are thinking about utilizing any tamers, I think the Black Taikamiya from BT-02 is definitely one of the better tamers that we could think about utilizing, just because he makes it even harder for the opponent to aggress onto some of our Digimon if our Digimon are black, and he's a decent memory fixer. So he's just one of the better generic tamers that we have access to if we're not running any blue package. But if we are running a blue package, we could think about utilizing Davis. So Davis is still just another good memory fixing tamer, and he also has the possibility of grabbing one of our blue Digimon or green Digimon from the top 3 of our deck and then adding it to our hand. So depending on how we play and how we build the deck, Davis could help us draw some cards as well as memory fix us. And then if you just want to run like just a tamer, just to run a tamer, I think Matt Ishida is definitely a really good tamer to run, just because this version of Matt from the starter deck could just passively gain us a memory for us not really needing to do anything. And again, because we're not necessarily the most memory efficient of decks, we still definitely want to have something to give us memory efficiency. But if you also want to think about just running the starter deck tie, you could also think about doing that just so you could make sure you hit over specific numbers when you're attacking the opponent's security. I just feel like Matt is a little bit more important to highlight just because he's going to help us try to gain memory. So for the most part, this is just what the new version of Megazoo is going to be looking like. And again, the whole point is to have some relatively decent high synergy to try to get into our level 7s more efficiently just by raw playing level 6s. And it's just a really solid deck to be thinking about. Even though you are going to be giving your opponent a ton of memory, if they're unable to actually utilize that memory, then it doesn't necessarily matter. And it just makes your plays and what you're playing that much more powerful and that much more effective at trying to just put so much pressure on the opponent that they just might not be able to respond every single time you play a new Mega. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and also feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.